Wine was poured on the rejected Omega to humiliate, until the Alpha King made the pack kneel. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Emma Thompson had always been different from the rest of her pack. As an Omega, she was supposed to have a natural strength that came with the pack's hierarchy, but Emma lacked that essential spark. Her scent, unlike the others, was faint, barely detectable. Because of this, she had become an easy target for mockery and scorn. The whispers behind her back were louder than the howls of the wolves, and the rejection was a constant companion. It wasn't that Emma didn't try. She worked hard, kept to herself, but she couldn't escape the cruel reality of being a rejected Omega in a pack that valued strength and dominance above all. Today was supposed to be like any other. The sun hung low, casting a golden hue over the gathering. The pack had assembled for a grand feast, but as usual, Emma found herself on the outskirts, away from the conversations and laughter. She could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, a burden she had long since learned to carry. But today it was worse. She could hear the murmurs, the cruel words, the laughter. Emma knew she would be the target of their amusement once more. The moment came as the pack's alpha stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. He called for the ceremonial drink to be served, and with it, the cruel twist of fate. A pitcher of wine was poured, but it wasn't for the alpha. No, this time, it was meant for Emma. The drink splashed across her dress, staining the fabric a deep red, much like the humiliation she felt. Laughter erupted from the crowd as Emma stood there, soaked and trembling. The burn of shame blazed hotter than the sun, and her heart sank into the depths of despair. But just as she felt the weight of the world press down on her, something unexpected happened. A voice, commanding and fierce, rang through the air. Enough! It was deep, powerful, unmistakable. The Alpha King, Alexander Blackwood, had arrived. The crowd fell silent, their eyes widening in awe and fear. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him. He was a legend, a figure of power, the leader of all packs. As Alexander stepped forward, his gaze locked onto Emma, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt seen. "She is mine," Alexander declared, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The crowd gasped, and then, with a single command, the Alpha King made the entire pack kneel. The wolves who had once mocked her, who had belittled her existence, now bowed before her. The humiliation was swept away, replaced by a sense of power and awe. Emma couldn't believe it. She stood there, still in shock, as Alexander walked toward her. His presence was overwhelming, and as he reached her side, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "No one will ever humiliate you again," he said, his voice soft yet filled with undeniable authority. Emma's eyes welled up with tears, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding her heart. In that moment, she realized that everything was about to change. The pack had been divided, and she, the rejected Omega, was no longer the outcast. She had been claimed, not just as a mate, but as a queen. Alexander had chosen her. And as the Alpha King stood by her side, Emma knew that her place in this world had just been rewritten. As Alexander stood beside Emma, his presence was a fortress, a shield against the pack that had once mocked her. The silence in the air was thick, filled with the weight of his authority. Emma couldn't comprehend what had just happened. She had been humiliated, drenched in wine, and yet here she was, standing next to the Alpha King, as the entire pack knelt before her. It was as if the ground beneath her had shifted, and suddenly, everything she had known was turned upside down. Alexander's gaze never wavered from her as he gently led her away from the center of the gathering. The pack, still on their knees, watched in awe, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and respect. Emma's heart raced in her chest as she walked beside him, the weight of her new reality settling in. She had never imagined something like this. She, an Omega, rejected by her own pack, now claimed by the Alpha King himself. They reached a private area away from the crowd, a quiet spot on the edge of the forest where the trees seemed to shield them from the world. Alexander stopped, turning to face her. His eyes, usually cold and commanding, softened for a moment as he looked at her. You don't need to be afraid anymore, he said, his voice low and comforting. No one will ever treat you like that again. Emma looked up at him, unsure of what to say. His words were kind, but they didn't make sense. How could this powerful alpha king be so gentle with someone like her? She had always been invisible, weak, and now, she was standing next to him, feeling like a dream. Why? She asked softly, her voice trembling. Why me? Alexander sighed, stepping closer. Because you are not like them. You have a heart, Emma. You care about others, and that is something they will never understand. That is what makes you strong. Emma shook her head, still in disbelief. But I'm just an Omega. I have no power. Alexander's eyes softened even more, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. Power is not always about strength, Emma. It's about heart. And you, my dear, have more heart than anyone I know. His words were like a balm to her wounded soul, soothing the years of hurt she had carried. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, something she had never felt before. It was as though the walls she had built around herself, to protect her from the world's cruelty, were slowly starting to crumble. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, truly seen, by someone who didn't judge her for what she lacked, but instead admired her for what she was. Alexander reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, his touch firm yet gentle. You are more than just an Omega, Emma. You are my Luna now, and I will protect you, no matter what. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Luna. The title echoed in her mind, making her pulse quicken. She was his. Luna. She had never imagined such a thing in her wildest dreams. A life that had once seemed hopeless now felt full of possibilities. The future that had been uncertain was now clear, with Alexander by her side. As they stood there in the quiet of the forest, Emma realized that this was just the beginning. Her life was about to change in ways she had never thought possible. The pack may have rejected her, but Alexander had chosen her. And that was all that mattered. I have to admit, Emma felt like she was living in a dream, and at that moment, she wasn't sure if she wanted to wake up. Standing beside Alexander, the Alpha King, in a secluded area surrounded by the quiet murmur of the forest, she could hardly believe the turn her life had taken. Just hours ago, she had been the laughingstock of the pack, humiliated and rejected, but now, she was beside the very man who had the power to change everything. His presence was overwhelming, yet comforting. It felt like a force of nature, one that demanded respect, but also offered protection. She had never felt so safe, so important. Alexander, noticing the hesitation in her eyes, smiled softly. Emma, I know this is overwhelming, he said, his voice steady and reassuring. But I want you to know this. You were never meant to be weak. The pack may have rejected you, but I see the strength in you. I've always known it. Emma's heart fluttered in her chest at his words. No one had ever seen her like that before, especially not with such certainty. She had always thought of herself as invisible, just another face in the crowd. But now, standing next to the Alpha King, she felt like she mattered. She felt like she was someone. I've been afraid my whole life, Emma confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Afraid that I would never find my place. That I would always be the Omega no one wanted. Alexander took a step closer, his hand resting gently on her arm. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You found your place with me, and I will make sure the world sees you for what you truly are. Emma swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in her throat. She had dreamed of a life where she was respected, where she wasn't just an afterthought. But never in her wildest dreams had she imagined this. She had always been told that Omegas were meant to be submissive, meant to take whatever came their way. But here she was, standing beside an Alpha King, who saw her as more than just an Omega. He saw her as a partner, as his Luna. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander smiled at her, a warmth in his eyes that made her heart ache. There's no need to thank me, he said softly. This is just the beginning, Emma. The pack will learn to respect you, and those who mocked you will have to answer to me. But most importantly, you will learn to respect yourself. You deserve that. His words were a balm to the wounds she had carried for so long. Emma had always thought that love and respect were things she could never have. But now, with Alexander's words, she realized that maybe she had been wrong. Maybe she was worthy of love. Maybe she was worthy of respect. As they stood there, a deep bond forming between them, Emma felt a new sense of purpose rise within her. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was Alexander's Luna, and together, they would show the pack what true strength and love looked like. The days that followed Emma's claim by Alexander were filled with a new sense of purpose. She was no longer the invisible Omega, overlooked and belittled by the pack. She was his Luna, standing at the Alpha King's side, and the pack was beginning to realize that. But Emma's journey wasn't without its challenges. Every day, she had to prove to herself that she was worthy of the title, worthy of the man who had chosen her. Alexander, for all his power and strength, was always by her side, guiding her through the process of stepping into her new role. She spent countless hours with him, learning the ways of the pack, the expectations of the Alpha's mate, and how to command the respect of those who had once mocked her. It was not easy. There were whispers in the halls of the castle, murmurs of disbelief that an Omega had been chosen as the Alpha King's mate. Some of the pack questioned his decision, unsure of whether Emma could truly live up to the power and responsibility that came with being his Luna. But Emma didn't let it bother her. She had been given a chance, and she was determined to take it. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Emma walked with Alexander through the gardens of the castle. The air was cool, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. They stopped by a fountain, and Alexander turned to her, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "You've been doing well, Emma," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "I know it's not easy, but I see the strength in you. You're becoming the Luna I always knew you could be." Emma smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. She had never imagined that she could be strong, that she could be someone others looked up to. But here she was, standing beside the Alpha King, his equal in every way. "You don't have to thank me," Alexander said with a smile. "You've earned every bit of this. But I know it's still hard for you. The pack, they're still learning to accept you." Emma nodded, her gaze lowering. She had known this would take time. Even though she had been claimed, even though Alexander had declared her his mate, the pack still had its doubts. They still looked at her as the Omega she once was, and not as the Luna she was becoming. "It doesn't matter," Emma said softly, looking up at Alexander. "I know it will take time, but I'm ready. I'll prove to them that I belong here. I belong with you." Alexander's smile grew warmer, and he took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I know you will," he said. "You've already proven it to me, and soon, you'll prove it to everyone else." As they stood there, hand in hand, Emma realized that this was just the beginning. Her journey had only just started, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer just an Omega. She was Alexander's Luna, and she was ready to take on the world with him by her side. The days passed in a blur of new experiences and challenges for Emma. With every step, she grew more confident in her role as Luna, but the weight of responsibility was always there, lurking in the back of her mind. She had always been an outsider, someone who didn't fit into the pack's expectations. Now, she was expected to lead them, to be the symbol of strength and grace beside Alexander. The whispers still came, but they were no longer about her worth. Now, they were about the future, about what kind of Luna Emma would become. She walked through the halls of the castle, her steps echoing in the vast, quiet corridors. It was a beautiful place, full of history and power, but it still felt unfamiliar to her. She had grown up in the outskirts of the pack, far from the grandeur of the castle, and everything here seemed larger than life. Alexander had always made her feel welcome, his presence a steady comfort as she adjusted to her new life, but even his support couldn't quiet the doubt that occasionally crept into her heart. She had been chosen, but was she truly capable of living up to the expectations placed on her? Could she really be the Luna the pack needed? Emma paused in front of a large window, looking out over the vast, sprawling lands that stretched beyond the castle walls. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over everything. The peaceful beauty of it all made her heart ache with longing. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to let the worries slip away. She wasn't alone in this. She had Alexander, and he believed in her. That thought, simple as it was, gave her strength. She turned away from the window just as Alexander entered the room. His presence was unmistakable, his energy commanding, but there was always a softness to him when he looked at her. "You're quiet today," he said, his voice gentle, as he walked toward her. Are you okay? Emma smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Just thinking, she replied. It's a lot to take in. Alexander nodded, understanding more than she realized. I know it is, but you don't have to do it alone. His hand reached out, resting on hers, grounding her in the moment. You've already proven you have everything it takes to lead this pack. You just need to trust yourself. The sincerity in his voice warmed her, and for the first time that day, Emma felt her doubts begin to fade. She had always questioned herself, always wondered if she was enough. But with Alexander by her side, she realized she didn't have to have all the answers. She just had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Thank you, she said softly, her grip tightening on his hand. I don't know what I would do without you. Alexander smiled, a warmth in his gaze that made her heart swell. You'll never have to find out, he promised. I'm right here. Always. As they stood there, in the quiet of the castle, Emma knew this was only the beginning of their journey. The pack would test her, challenge her, but with Alexander at her side, she was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer just the Omega who had been cast aside. She was the Luna, and she would rise to meet her destiny, not for anyone else, but for herself, and for the future she and Alexander would build together. As the days turned into weeks, Emma began to settle into her new life with Alexander. The transition from being a rejected Omega to becoming the Luna of the pack was still overwhelming at times, but she was slowly learning to embrace her new identity. With Alexander's constant support, she had gained confidence, and the pack had begun to accept her in ways she hadn't thought possible. Though the whispers still lingered, the once skeptical members of the pack were starting to see her for who she truly was. Not just an Omega, but the strong, capable Luna who stood beside their king. One afternoon, Alexander took Emma for a walk through the castle's training grounds. The sound of warriors sparring echoed through the air, the clashing of swords and the rhythmic thuds of feet on the dirt filling the space. It was a sight Emma had never seen up close before. She had grown up in the outskirts of the pack, far from the training grounds, and had never witnessed the power and strength of the warriors in action. How do they do that? Emma asked, watching a pair of warriors exchange blows. It takes years of training, Alexander replied with a smile, his eyes watching her closely. But it's not just about strength. It's about control, discipline. Emma nodded, absorbing the information. It must be hard, though, she said quietly, her gaze still fixed on the warriors. To be that strong, to be able to fight like that. Alexander's gaze softened as he looked at her. Strength is not just about physical power, Emma. True strength comes from within. It's about knowing who you are and standing firm in that knowledge, no matter what the world throws at you. His words resonated deep within her. Emma had spent so many years questioning herself, doubting her worth, believing that she would never be enough. But now, with Alexander by her side, she was starting to see things differently. She was beginning to understand that her strength didn't have to look like anyone else's. It could come from her heart, from her determination to fight for herself and for those she loved. As they continued to watch the warriors, Emma felt a surge of pride. She had always been told that Omegas were weak, that they were meant to be subservient. But she was learning that being an Omega didn't mean she had to be weak. She had a power within her that was unique to her, and she was starting to believe in it. I think I understand, Emma said softly, turning to Alexander. It's not just about being strong. It's about being strong in who you are. Alexander nodded, his expression warm. Exactly. He placed a hand on her shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. And I see that strength in you, Emma. Every day, you show me just how strong you truly are. Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had never felt more seen, more appreciated, than she did in this moment. Alexander believed in her, and for the first time in her life, she was beginning to believe in herself, too. The pack may have once rejected her, but she had found a place where she truly belonged, not just as the Omega, but as Alexander's Luna, a woman with strength, purpose, and the heart of a leader. As they walked away from the training grounds, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, and she was ready to lead, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. With Alexander by her side, she knew she could handle anything. Weeks passed, and Emma's transformation into Luna was becoming more evident with each passing day. The once Shy, quiet Omega, who had feared the pack's judgment, was now walking with confidence, her posture straight and her gaze unwavering. She had not only earned the respect of those around her, but she had also earned her place at Alexander's side, standing tall as his equal. Despite the progress she had made, Emma knew the journey wasn't over. The pack, though beginning to accept her, was still full of doubts. It wasn't easy being the mate of the Alpha King, and Emma understood that. The expectations were high, and she knew there was more she had to prove, not just to the pack, but to herself. One morning, after breakfast, Alexander took her aside, his eyes serious. "Emma," he began, his tone filled with a quiet strength, "there are some challenges ahead. The pack is still adjusting, and there will be those who will test you. It's natural, but I want you to know that I'm with you, every step of the way." Emma met his gaze, her heart swelling with pride. She had always admired his strength, his unwavering leadership, but now, she was beginning to see a different side of him. He wasn't just a powerful Alpha King. He was a man who cared deeply, a man who believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "I'm ready," Emma replied, her voice steady. "I may not have all the answers, but I'm learning, and I'm not going to back down." Alexander smiled, his eyes softening. "I know you're ready. I've seen it in you from the very beginning. You have a strength inside you that you've only just begun to tap into. I'm proud of you, Emma." His words, simple as they were, filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt before. They weren't just words of encouragement. They were words of trust, words that told her he believed in her fully. And in that moment, Emma realized something. She didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to have all the answers. She just needed to keep moving forward, to keep believing in herself and in Alexander, and together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. That afternoon, Emma sat in the castle's grand hall, watching as members of the pack moved about, going through their daily routines. There was a certain quiet energy in the air, a sense that things were shifting, that the pack was slowly coming together. Despite the whispers and doubts that still lingered, there was something else too, something Emma could feel deep within her. It was a sense of unity, a sense of respect, that had begun to form. As Emma observed, she noticed a group of pack members glancing at her. At first, she thought they were just being cautious, but then, to her surprise, one by one, they nodded at her, acknowledging her presence. It was subtle, but Emma couldn't deny the meaning behind it. They were beginning to accept her, to see her as their Luna, not just as the Alpha King's mate. Her heart raced as she realized the weight of that moment. She wasn't just standing beside Alexander as his Luna. She was standing beside him as a leader, someone who had earned her place. "It's happening, isn't it?" she whispered to herself, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "They're starting to see me." Later that evening, Alexander joined her by the fireplace in the grand hall. "You did well today," he said, his voice low and filled with pride. "You're gaining the respect of the pack, Emma. And that's no small feat." Emma leaned into him, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "Your belief in me means everything." Alexander kissed the top of her head gently. "You've always had the strength, Emma. I've just been here to help you see it." In that moment, Emma knew that their journey together was just beginning. The pack still had its challenges, but with Alexander by her side, she was ready to face them. She had found her place, not just as the Alpha King's mate, but as the Luna who would lead the pack into a new era, one where she would prove that even the most unlikely among them could rise to greatness. Emma stood at the edge of the castle's balcony, looking out over the lands that stretched beyond. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, signaling the end of another long day. Life had changed so much since the first time she had stood in this very spot, filled with doubts and uncertainty. Now, standing here as Alexander's Luna, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had come so far, from the rejected Omega who had been humiliated and cast aside, to a woman of power and respect. The journey had not been easy, but it had shaped her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Emma had proven herself capable, not only to the pack, but also to herself. Her heart was full as she thought of all the moments that had brought her here. Alexander had been a constant source of strength, guiding her, encouraging her, and believing in her when she didn't believe in herself. His unwavering support had given her the courage to rise above the challenges, and now, she was ready to lead alongside him. As she turned from the balcony, She found Alexander standing in the doorway, watching her. His presence was as commanding as ever, but there was a tenderness in his eyes that only she could see. "You're deep in thought," he said, his voice soft and warm. "What's on your mind?" Emma smiled, her gaze meeting his. "Just thinking about how far I've come. I never imagined I would be standing here like this, by your side, as your Luna." Alexander stepped forward, taking her hand in his. "You've always had the strength, Emma. You just needed to realize it. And now, the pack sees it too. They respect you, and they trust you." Emma's heart swelled at his words. She had worked hard to earn the pack's respect, but hearing it from Alexander meant more than anything. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave me the chance to prove myself." Alexander's gaze softened. "You've proven yourself more times than you know. I've always believed in you, Emma. And I always will." His words sent a wave of warmth through her. She had always felt like an outsider, but with Alexander by her side, she felt like she truly belonged. As they stood there, hand in hand, Emma realized that their bond was stronger than anything she had ever imagined. They had faced so much together, and they would continue to face whatever challenges came their way. The pack was still adjusting, still learning to accept her as their Luna, but Emma knew it was only a matter of time before they fully embraced her. She had already earned her place beside Alexander, and no one could take that away from her. As the days went on, Emma found herself taking on more responsibilities. She worked alongside Alexander, helping to guide the pack and ensure that their future was secure. She was no longer just a passive observer in the pack's affairs. She was an active participant, leading with strength and compassion. The pack had seen her strength, and they had seen her heart. They knew she was capable of leading them into a new era, one where every member, no matter their rank, was valued. Emma was no longer the quiet Omega in the shadows. She was the Luna, a leader in her own right. And with Alexander by her side, she was ready for whatever the future held. The days blended together as Emma continued her role as Luna beside Alexander, each one filled with new challenges and responsibilities. She had grown into her position more than she ever thought possible, but even with her newfound strength and confidence, she knew that there were still obstacles ahead. The pack was still adjusting, still testing her, but Emma stood firm, determined to show them that she was capable of leading. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was the Luna, the heart of the pack. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alexander invited her to the castle's grand hall for a private dinner. It had become one of their little traditions, moments of peace amidst the constant demands of leadership. As they sat at the table, the soft glow of candles casting flickering shadows on the walls, Alexander looked at her with a sense of pride in his eyes. "You've come so far, Emma," he said quietly, his voice carrying a note of admiration. "I remember when we first met, and now look at you. You've earned the respect of the pack, and they trust you." Emma smiled, a soft blush rising on her cheeks at his praise. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her voice filled with sincerity. "You gave me the chance to prove myself." Alexander reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You proved it to me, and to everyone else. You've shown what it means to lead with heart, and that's something no one can take away from you." His words were simple, but they meant everything to her. She had spent so many years doubting herself, wondering if she would ever be enough. But now, sitting here with Alexander, she knew that she had found her place. She was not just the Omega, and she wasn't just the Alpha King's mate. She was a leader in her own right, a woman who had earned the right to stand beside him as his equal. "What's next for us?" Emma asked, looking up at Alexander with a sense of curiosity. "What do we do now?" Alexander's eyes softened, and he smiled. "Now, we continue to build. We keep growing the pack, making it stronger. We bring people together, create a place where no one is left behind. And we do it together." Emma's heart swelled with love and pride. She had come so far, but she knew that this was only the beginning. There was so much more to do, so much more to build. And with Alexander by her side, she knew that they would succeed. As the night went on, they talked about their dreams for the future, plans for the pack, and the life they would build together. Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment, something she had never experienced before. She had once been the outcast, the one who was overlooked and dismissed, but now, she was the heart of something greater. The pack would grow stronger, not just because of Alexander's strength, but because of her heart, her determination, and her love for the people she led. Together, they were unstoppable. The future was theirs to shape, and Emma knew that, with Alexander by her side, they would face whatever came next, hand in hand, as equals, as partners. And that was all she had ever needed.